Waves swished gently against the sand, wiping off footsteps as Woojin walks. His toes squish into the sand, wind ruffling his hair, tugging at the ribbons around his flowers. Woojin makes his way to the black rocks bordering the beach, clutching the bouquet to his chest. A tear tracks his way down his face as he tosses the flowers in his hands into the water. It splashes, floating up. The ribbon trails in the water and a wave dashes it twice against the rocks, white foaming against the black. Woojin leaves without looking back. The flowers float out into the open sea, purple blooms sinking and vanishing beneath the waves.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah Edmonds. I am the editor-in-chief of For Page and Screen magazine. I'm here today with Venessa Young. She is the author of Silver Waters, a wonderful screenplay that we had the privilege of publishing in our second issue. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. Now, can you tell us a little bit about Silver Waters? What is it about? What inspired you to write it?
So for Silver Waters, it actually started out as a short story. So it's technically complete, but when I had the idea to change it into a script, it was actually for like a uni mod for script writing basically. So at the time I didn't have any idea like what I wanted to do until I reread this short story and I was like, this would work very well as a script. Like it's a very visual story in general. So that's kind of what inspired it. So what it's about, um, for the screen. So when I planned out the script, it was meant to be kind of like a web series, like because for the mod we had to plan it out as if we were gonna write a complete like drama series. But so Silver Waters is actually a small part of a larger script. So it would be considered maybe the first episode of one of the series lah. But the whole story basically is about acceptance, self-acceptance, and it's a very, can I say, magical realism sort of, yeah, sort of story. So it's feeling, I guess when I wrote it, I was at a point in my life where where I felt trapped, which is basically the essence of the entire script. It's you're finding your way out and finding your way to yourself, basically. And I don't think there's an ending. So the funny story is that when I first wrote the script, I didn't have an ending, like for this particular section, until my tutor was like, you don't have an ending, you need an ending for this script. So I wrote the ending for 4 pages and screen before I submitted it. But yeah.
I could definitely picture this as a web series. I think it would lend itself really, really well to that format. I would watch it at least. Um, so, what challenges did you find when you were changing this from a short story to a screenplay? Was there anything that was really difficult, or was it really simple?
No, there were definitely a lot of challenges because I started as a fiction writer. So it's very hard for me to not put emotion into script because like for script you have to write everything that the audience sees. Like that's the rule in general for script writing. So it was very, very hard for me to not do that. And I still do that. Like I think if you read the script again, which I just did yesterday because I forgot everything about it after I wrote it, which I there are some places where you're just like, can the audience see this? Like, is this for the audience or is this just the writer, like coming through? So yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest challenges for me. And I think one of the things that my tutor actually pointed out for me was that I make scenes very long. Like, I think she talked about the breakfast scene like in the first. I think it's basically the first or second scene of the script, and she said that it was way too long. Not say in a bad way, but it was more like, could I cut it down? But I guess this is like the coming from a fiction background, like that's the problem that I face when it's translating to both. Yeah.
Yeah, I relate to that. When I was in the script writing class for the first time, I got the same feedback. All of my scenes were like 3 pages long. It's like, no, it should be about a page. I'm like, oh, that's so short though. It feels so short.
Yeah, it is. You don't realize how many words you use in fiction until you have to like translate it into script, and you're just like, oh, I can't do this.
I definitely get that. I think that it does work very well. Your script does work very well visually. I know we get quite a few screenplay submissions, and it's so sad. It like breaks my heart to reject so many because they aren't very visual. They have all of the emotion words in there and the mind reading for the characters. And I'm like, I love this, but it's not a screenplay. So I was so thrilled to get your work. And even if there are a few words here or there, it worked so well and I could see it. It was great.
Thank you, because it went through a lot of edits. Like it was very, very hard to pass out the emotions. I think I feel like I'm glad you can relate because it was a struggle like throughout the class.
Absolutely. I definitely get it. So you mentioned you started out as a fiction writer. How did you get your start in writing in general?
Well, that's a very good question. I guess I was always a reader. Like when I was very young, that was what we were allowed to do. Like, so I read, and then I think I started writing when I was 7. But it wasn't like the serious writing, because when you're a kid, you don't really think about, oh, I want this to be very good. I just want, like, the story in my head, I want to see it, you know? So I think I did. I remember this clearly. Like I had a little writing club thing with my friends. Well, with my friend when we were 7. And then I'm not sure if I wrote anything that came out eventually, but I think I started seriously writing when I was 13. Like, a lot of people get their start in fan fiction and stuff. So that's when I discovered writing like that. So I didn't stop. Yeah, I didn't stop. So I guess properly writing would be 13, but yeah, around there.
Mhm. Yeah, great. I love hearing stories of people who had writing with them when they were really young and they come back to it later. I think it's a sign that it's really meant to be, if you just can't stop, and no matter where you are in life. I think that's fantastic. Um, so do you have a favorite medium out of all of the different forms you write in?
I guess I would say fiction, prose fiction, mainly because that's what I'm comfortable in. Like I started with it, and then that's where I like to be. But I didn't used to be very experimental. I'm very glad that I went to school for writing, even though it's kind of, I think some people would, like, especially in my country, some people would say a writing degree is a useless degree. I disagree as a writer, because I mean obviously, but I just think that I learned so much. Like I grew so much as a writer. And the thing about being in school for it is that you have to experiment. Like there's no, you can't stick in your, like there's not, you can't stay in your box. Like you don't grow, and you'll probably fail all your classes if you did stay in your box. So, and I guess because I had to take so many different modules, like I basically took all of the writing modules that my university offered, because I couldn't do art. I mean, I could, but I'm not good at it. So I dabbled a lot. But I think ultimately I enjoy fiction, prose fiction. Yeah, but I do like poetry. I don't know. It's very hard to choose, but I think fiction. Fiction will be my first choice, I guess.
Great. Sorry to throw a hard question at you. Didn't think it
That's
would be quite
fine.
that hard. But yeah, you had mentioned earlier about this theme of feeling trapped in your script. Is that something that carries across more of your work, or do you have any themes that you feel drawn to across your work?
Mm, I didn't used to be a very character driven, but I still don't think I am. I think I'm more of a plot driven person. But I think it's starting to I think this script, actually not the script, but the short story that inspired this script, sorry, was the starting point of me wanting to write more introspective fiction. Yeah. But I think a theme that carries across would probably be like this sense of not belonging. Like I think I'm very predictable in that. Like a lot of people write stuff like that, but this sense of not belonging and trying to find your place in this world, trying to find a person that resonates with you. I write a lot of romance for somebody who's not very interested in romance. I feel like I don't know, is it a thing? Like I've read somewhere that fiction is projecting, like the writer just projects. I do not want to examine whether that is true, but yeah, I think trap. And recently I like to explore sexuality because it's not something that I wrote a lot about when I was younger. So I think Silver Waters was the first time where I really made it a like the problem. No, I guess not a problem. It's not a problem, but it's like the main thing that's keeping this person from being themselves. So yeah, but mainly finding yourself. I guess I think it's a message that I really want to convey, that it's okay to be lost sometimes and you will eventually find your way. But I don't think there's anything else that really carries through besides this. It's probably projecting, right? I'm probably projecting.
But I think that's a fantastic message, though, and it's one so many people need to hear that it's okay to not know where you're going. You'll still find where you're meant to be in the end. Um, no, you can totally correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm not super familiar. You're in Singapore, correct?
Yeah.
Is there, I'm not familiar with this. What's kind of the social opinion on like homosexuality and queerness over there?
Not very. Oh, okay. I think it's slowly changing. Like, I mean, you would expect this, to be honest. Like, yeah, the younger people are more accepting,
Mhm.
and the older generation, you either have to change their minds or they're just stuck where they are. They did recently repeal a law in Singapore that makes gay sex illegal, something like that. So, but it's very hard to talk politics when it comes to like this kind of rights in Singapore because we are still a very conservative country. Like
Mhm.
in my eyes, I think it is. But views are slowly changing. I'm very grateful that my parents are very, well, I wouldn't say my parents, but my mom is very accepting and open-minded to this kind of thing. But I think they just need time. Yeah. So far, nothing super negative, but it's just, I guess it takes time compared to the rest of the world. Like Singapore still needs more time to break out of that old traditional thinking, I guess.
Mhm. Yeah, we have a very strong conservative movement here in the US right now too, and
Yeah.
it's hard to break out of that when people are so set in their ways. Um, when you were writing this for your class, then did you get any pushback from anyone you were working with like that?
No, thankfully, because I studied in an Australian university, I think that helped a lot. Like knowing that Australia is so open with LGBT like laws and things. Like I can write this and I can send it in as an assignment without fearing that it's going to affect my grades or like I'm going to get judged. Like no, like it's just it exists. Like I feel like this should be a norm. Like people should just be allowed to exist, you know. But that's not something that you can do here in Singapore. Like everything that you write will be analyzed, will be judged, and it's it's very scary. I think producing work in Singapore, publishing in Singapore in general is just very, can I say, censored in a way? Yeah. So I was lucky to work on this, not for my home country, I guess, but it's quite, yeah, I was lucky though.
Absolutely. That's a shame. That's honestly such a shame. I definitely agree. People should be allowed to just be, and it's a shame it's not like that. Um, what was it? This is just me being curious. What was it like going to school in Australia?
Um, so the sad thing is I didn't get to spend much time there because I enrolled in 2020, I think. So I spent 1 month there and then I had to come back because the COVID situation. So I had to do 2.5 years of unis, but I spent 2 years here. Then I did my last semester in Australia. It's generally quite fun, but I think I'm a very introverted person. So I feel like it's an expectation everywhere for writers. Like we don't like talking in general. Yeah, but it was very fun. And honestly, I wasn't expecting to like the classes as much as I did. Like I minored in literature. I'm not a literature person, but I did have a lot of fun like doing my classes there and just experiencing the country. I feel like if I went there now, like after everything, I think I would have tried to connect more with my classmates, which I did not do when I was there. So that's like my one regret. But I think they're just generally very friendly and very open to like new people, which is very good for somebody who has to go overseas to study. So I had fun. I made friends.
That's so awesome. So where do you think you're going next with your writing? Is there anything you're working on in particular? Anything coming out soon?
Well, currently I'm not doing so much original fiction, which is kind of sad because I feel like my tone of writing for every medium changes. So I really need to find that voice for fiction again. I don't have anything coming out. I'm working on the second episode screenplay for Silver Waters. No promises when it's gonna come out. But I do have some short stories that are published. I think it's called the Evermore Review, which is a journal inspired by Taylor Swift's songs, I think. Yeah. So you can find my work on I think it's the first issue. I think they are still accepting submissions now, actually. So
Oh,
if that's
awesome.
something you want to, yeah.
That's great. That's great. I'll definitely have to look them up. I've not heard of them, but I'll check them out. Um, this is the last question for me, a little bonus question. If you could give advice to writers out there, what would it be?
I think just right. Like I know the blank page is scary, but you can't edit something, you can't change something if you don't have the words there. So write, it doesn't need to be perfect, just write it first. Maybe the thing is sometimes when you write it, maybe the moment it exists and you leave it and maybe you come back, you realize that it's not as bad as you thought it was. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, that is fantastic advice. Fantastic advice. Thank you so much for that and for being here to have this conversation. It's been really, really nice to meet you and speak with you.
Thank you. It's nice to see you too.